Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, your host, joined by CJ Vogel. CJ's out at the airport watching a bunch of players leave. They came in this weekend, 16 visitors, official visitors in total in Austin this weekend. CJ, several guys already committed, most of them not committed. No one brought a bigger contingency, however, than the state of Texas's number one prospect, wide receiver Dakorien Moore. He tweeted something out this afternoon that is I tell you what, this is a family picture now. That quite the show. Tell us a little bit about what you know about Moore's official visit, and then we'll get into some other players that made their way to Austin as well.
Yeah, of course, the number one wide receiver in all of the land was on campus this week for Steve Sarkisian. This was becoming a bit of a personal recruitment for Sarkisian. Obviously, you see him, front and center with Dakorien and his family. Texas rolled out the red carpet, as you would expect for a number one wide receiver, a guy from the state of Texas that Texas doesn't want slipping away, whether it be back to LSU, up to Oregon, Ohio State's in the mix as well. Things went very well this week for Dakorien Moore and his family on campus at Texas. I'm told Texas again, whether it be Sarkisian in the car with his family driving out to dinner Friday night, or just treating the family on campus for position meetings and, kind of the other activities that the staff had planned for him as well. Texas did a very, very well-run visit out of this weekend for Dakorien. I feel very comfortable with where the Longhorns sit in this recruitment. He will be taking his final visit next weekend, and I believe, come July, you'll see a decision made. And after this visit, again, I feel very comfortable with where the Longhorns sit.
Who does he have left on his official visit trek, CJ?
Yeah, he's made it out to LSU, of course. I believe Ohio State as well, and next weekend will be Oregon.
I got it. All right, so that's Dakorien Moore, a young man out of Duncanville. Who was his official host? Was Ryan Wingo? Is that correct?
That's right. He requested Ryan Wingo. I think it was a bit of a surprise for me, at least, maybe having known and seen him with Colin Simmons and their friendship and tight relationship from playing back at Duncanville. Of course, Dakorien was on campus a couple times in the spring for track meets. It was always Colin Simmons, the first guy off the track to go meet him there as well. But he requested Ryan Wingo, and you see the five-star receiver relationship being built there, kind of getting an idea of why Ryan picked the Longhorns and Steve Sarkisian. Picking up and moving from St. Louis gives Dakorien Moore a little bit more assurance with why Texas would be the spot for him.
It's interesting. Not only Dakorien Moore, just one of 16 players on campus in Austin. CJ, you and I were talking earlier. In the pregame, by the way, for the spring game, we actually did a pregame at the Victory Lap. That was our that's where we did. Rod Babers and I did a hour-long pre-spring game talk. Well, it appears, according to you and some others, that the Longhorns, the team was at the Victory Lap last night, the sports bar type place that's right off of campus there as the host on Saturday night. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's right in the heart of West Campus. For anybody that's familiar with that area, where Cannon Abel's used to be, an adjacent lot over there where Fricano's was as well. Victory Lap, great new bar in West Campus. The team rented it out. They had all the players, all the hosts, and they put on the Gervonta Tank Davis boxing match last night. Of course, he's a big hit amongst the football community as well. So he won in a big-time knockout. And so it was a big opportunity for those guys that were hosting recruits to kind of sit back, relax with them. I talked to Lance Jackson, Marco Jones, a number of guys that were leaving this afternoon. They all said it was a hit. So they had a great time on campus. Of course, Texas didn't have to worry about them going too far off of campus or anything like that. But, hey, they had a great time out there at Victory Lap, and it sounds like it was a really successful evening for these guys to get to know their hosts and some of the team.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a unique, different. That's something different Texas hasn't done before. So Steve Sarkisian and those guys continuing to evolve over time. Good stuff there, and using a place that is centrally located near campus, et cetera, to get the guys out and about. All right, let's talk a little bit more about some other players, CJ, that you saw either on campus or leaving campus today at the airport. Let's maybe start with some guys that you talked to, like Lance Jackson, Riley Prettijohn, Ricky Stewart. Name the guys that you want to talk about, and let's go there.
Yeah, I want to start out west. We'll start with Tristan Castro. He was the first guy that we saw this morning getting out to the airport, California, cornerback. It's a Texas and USC battle. Currently, he is a verbal pledge to the Trojans right now, but I think Texas made a really impressive jump in his recruitment right now. He was wide-eyed talking about the city, the university, and obviously the campus as well with the way that Terry Joseph has been recruiting him. But aside from him, it's Johnny Nansen, it's Chris Jackson, it's Jeff Banks, it's Steve Sarkisian. There's a lot of California ties. He mentioned Texas kind of having a lot of connections to him that he maybe wasn't expecting. So he's going to go to USC next week for their big official visit weekend as well. Compare the two, and then you'll get a final decision from him early in July. Aside from him, Marco Jones, another West Coast guy, edge rusher. Interestingly enough, he'll be recruited right now as kind of an stand-up off-ball linebacker that can spin down to the edge. He had a great time on campus. He said, again, Texas is opening his eyes a little bit more at the moment. And like Tristan Castro, he mentioned the Texas connections there as well. That's Johnny Nansen taking that one over a little bit as well. He got to spend some time with Lance Jackson, obviously. Both are edge rushing, 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", in that range. They're big bodies, lengthy arms. Both are big-time baseball players as well. So he'll be headed out to Irvine tomorrow for a baseball tournament out in California. The conversation about baseball at Texas was had this weekend. We'll see. He said it's more a luxury than a necessity in his recruitment. So, of course, we'll see if that has any bearing, any weight moving forward for him.
I wanted to mention this real quick. Castro, a cornerback out of Upland, like you mentioned, 6 foot 170. Marcus Jones, 6'5", 230 out of San Ramon Valley. Hey, what about the two defensive tackles that were on campus? We get a bunch of questions about them. Brandon Brown and Kevin Wynn, both from the Southeast. Brown out of O'Galley, Florida, and then Wynn out of South Georgia area. What did you hear about those guys?
Yeah, I'll start with Brandon Brown. Obviously, one of the big commits in the class right now that Texas is hoping, fighting, praying to hold on to. We talked to someone as he was leaving to the airport. There's still some Bo Davis, momentum in his recruitment right now in his circle. Texas did a good job. If you talk to Brandon Brown, he'll tell you everything is positive, everything is going well for the Longhorns, and his commitment's still firm, though there still is that pull to Bo Davis right now in his circle, worth mentioning. Another thing I wanted to mention there, Bobby, is CJ Baxter was who recruited him or hosted him this weekend. We talked about it last week as well. Javion Hilson was hosted by CJ Baxter. So that Florida connection there, the staff is putting a lot of trust in CJ Baxter. He's a great representation of the university, similarly to what we saw at times with Bijan Robinson being that face for the player panels for junior days or big visit opportunities. Brandon Brown's, being hosted by CJ Baxter puts a lot of trust right now in what he can do as really, a guy that can attract from the state of Florida as well. Kevin Wynn, on the other hand, Texas is fighting South Carolina, Georgia, a number of other SEC programs right now for him. He wants to study culinary. I mean, this is a guy that was chefing up a little bit on the trip for Texas. They made that very apparent to him. Hey, we're going to make sure that you have every opportunity to come to Texas and learn what you want to learn. He was able to get behind, on the stovetop, start whipping it up a little bit this week. Jared talked to him a little bit. Texas is starting to make a little bit more moves here for him. But again, kind of luring him out of that Georgia area is going to be pretty difficult. But he had a great time. His brother, his mother were all on campus with him this weekend as well. So we'll see again with him moving forward. I think anything before the season for Kevin Wynn is likely in terms of a decision or an announcement.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned Jerry Hamilton, obviously out there with you today at the airport as well. He's headed back to Houston. He'll be on the live stream later tonight at 7:00 Central. We're going to have another wrap up, get some more content out there for you guys to hear about all of these guys because we got so many. We can't necessarily go over each and every one. But a couple others I wanted to hit for sure. One was John Mills and Nick Brooks and Lamont Rogers. All three of those guys at the offensive line spot. CJ, what are your thoughts there with Mills, Brooks, and Rogers and what you guys are hearing today?
Yeah, I think Texas is very much a player for Nick Brooks. And I think that's a bit of a development from where we were probably about a month ago. Obviously, Iowa was perceived to be the early favorite there. Georgia became a big-time player. Now Texas is starting to emerge as a real threat to land Nick Brooks out of Iowa. I got to watch him walk in, Bobby. He's all 6'7", 355, 360 pounds. He is the definition of a big human. And right now, Kyle Flood's doing a tremendous job making him feel like a priority. And when you look at this class, the way that it's starting to shake up, whether they take 5 or 6 offensive linemen in this class, he's a guy I believe that will have a spot regardless of the other numbers, as will Michael Fasusi, who's coming in next week as well. So that'll be interesting. Obviously, John Mills is a guy that's been familiar to campus as well. I think Texas was the leader coming into this weekend. I think Texas sits in a very good spot as he departs back out to California this week as well. Those are the two that I'm keeping a very close eye on at the moment coming out of this weekend, whereas things for Lamont Rogers might be a little bit more cloudy. The question with where Lamont Rogers sits right now is whether or not he's going to have a future potentially inside. You look at that tackle room right now. Obviously, you have a Coleman committed on the tackle spot. Michael Fasusi coming in next week, and Nick Brooks. Things are moving very well in his direction as well. So the big question for Lamont Rogers is, will he have a spot in the Texas class? Will it be Texas A&M or Missouri, who made a very impactful official visit earlier this month as well? So that's kind of the big question, kind of the big, big picture lookout for Lamont Rogers is whether or not he's kind of on that top tier for the pecking order right now on the offensive line.
Yeah, clearly John Mills, the young man out of San Francisco, had a tremendous visit is what we're told. We did not get a chance to speak to prior to his leaving Austin today. Jerry Hamilton hopefully will have something a little bit more on John. We do believe that he had a good visit from what we're hearing, but let's wait until we talk to the man himself, hopefully later today. Another guy I want to go over real quick, if you don't mind, is Kelshawn Johnson, the wide receiver out of Hitchcock. A lot of people thought he, as well as a defensive end, Smith and Rogo, were headed elsewhere as of last weekend. Some people put a crystal ball in for Smith and Rogo to go to Texas Tech. Some put a crystal ball in for Kelshawn Johnson to go to Texas A&M. Coming out of this weekend, of course, that was maybe a bit premature before visiting Texas, where both of them had really liked beforehand. Your thoughts on both of those players subsequent to their official visit to Texas?
Yeah, this was a big opportunity for Texas to get back some momentum for both of those guys, right? We've talked about Kelshawn Johnson. He's had an opportunity in the past to join the 2024 or the 25 Texas class. He visited multiple times in the spring, was on campus for the junior day in January as well. Texas is very intrigued with him. They want him in the class, and they made it known. Jonte Cook was his host. And you don't just throw Jonte Cook around to guys that aren't familiar or guys that aren't on top of that recruiting board right now. Sarkisian called Kelshawn a week ago, immediately following his Texas A&M visit as well. So all things are pointing towards Texas being very pursuant in terms of getting Kelshawn in the class. I was told after last week's visit to Texas A&M, things were looking very well for the Aggies. Right now, he told our Jerry Hamilton things are 50-50 between Texas A&M and Texas. I do not believe he'll be making his official visit to USC next week. So the decision will be coming between the Aggies and the Longhorns. That will be another in-state big rivalry recruitment moving forward. But Texas did a very fine job making him feel like a priority on a week where Dakorien Moore was a guy that stole a lot of the headlines. Kelshawn Johnson made it known that he felt like Texas was very heavily pursuing him at the moment. And then Smith and Rogo out of Elise Hastings out of Houston, the edge rusher, made it to campus by himself. Maybe a bit of a surprise there. Parents were unable to make it. His dad made it to the visit in early April for spring practice, but he was by himself this weekend. And I do think those crystal balls, those predictions to Texas Tech were a bit premature a week ago, but again, Texas Tech did a fine job getting out to that momentum. Texas comes back, combats that a little bit better this weekend with him compared to some of the other guys on campus. I thought Texas did a great job with some of the returns that we're hearing from Smith and Rogo as well. He has a commitment date set for June 1st. Very noteworthy as well. Texas Tech, Washington in the mix there, Oklahoma as well. But I think Texas, after this visit, sits very high on his list. It would not be a surprise for me to continue hearing that leading up to his decision at the turn of the calendar to July.
Yeah, July 1st. You said June 1st, but you meant July 1st. Obviously, here it's June 15th. Happy Father's Day, or is it 16th today? 16th. Happy Father's Day to everyone, by the way, this afternoon. All right, the last two I wanted to talk about from a high school or from a official visit perspective that are uncommitted. Riley Prettijohn and Jonathan Cunningham, the two linebackers. What did you hear on those two?
Yeah, Riley, of course, he's a familiar name. A number of Texas commits in this class are trying to get him into the fold. Lance Jackson's a guy that was, by his side a number of times throughout the weekend, trying to get him to join the class, right? We've talked about it in the past. Elijah Barnes is another guy who's been vocal and trying to get Riley Prettijohn into the class. Is a guy 6'2", has a 10.7, 10.8 speed in the 100-meter. He's a guy that Johnny Nansen has been over to see a number of times since he was hired at Texas, and now Texas sits in a very good spot. I feel very comfortable about Texas right now with where he sits. Of course, Texas A&M will have a chance to make up some ground and make things a little bit more interesting next weekend with his official visit to College Station. So the decision ultimately will come down to Texas and Texas A&M again, in my eyes. USC, Michigan, a couple of other schools, Florida State have made things interesting. But right now, if I had to put a leader at the top of the board, it would be the Longhorns for Riley Prettijohn. And it's been a full staff effort, and a number of recruits have commits in this class has certainly made things more favorable for the Longhorns' chances moving forward. Jonathan Cunningham's an interesting one, Bobby, because he had visited Utah a week ago. Things moved really quickly and earned a lot of momentum from the Utes after that trip. There's some question marks about whether or not he would be a guy that would see the field early in his tenure at Texas. There are some folks in his camp I've talked to that believe maybe other places would be a more desirable location for him to get on the field and feel like a priority right away. Whether or not that's the case and whether or not that's being pitched to him by Texas or other programs, I can't confirm, but I do know that that conversation is being had. He, of course, has been recruited by Texas and Johnny Nansen since being hired earlier this winter. He's a guy that Texas has been had on campus on top of the big boards for quite a while. So we'll see. He has another visit coming up, and I believe July visit decision coming in the next month or so.
All right. Again, we're going to have more tonight at around 7 o'clock on the live stream. But before I go, I would be remiss if I did not mention two other guys that were on campus. And you mentioned one of them, Lance Jackson, the big defensive end out of Texarkana, Pleasant Grove, and Ricky Stewart, another East Texan out of Tyler Chapel Hill, the running back. Both made their official visits to Austin as well this weekend, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I talked to Lance on the phone right after his trip. He's headed back up, of course, to Texarkana. He got a long drive. I told him I hope he gets a nap in there at some point. But he said he's completely locked in. Everything he wanted to see coming into this weekend, he saw. No other visits. He's completely locked into the class. And again, he's up to about 270, Bobby. So he said that was his pitching weight. So he's ready to slim down a little bit this summer and get back to about 255 to 260 for his senior season. But we saw the photo of him next to Steve Sarkisian. My goodness, that's a big kid coming off the edge. Really impressive athlete, no doubt.
All right. So we've got a number of different things coming up. We are tracking we've heard a couple of things that may have happened. And we are tracking that at this point in time, waiting to see if one of these players wants to go public with their announcement. If and when that happens, we will be back here at On Texas Football with that announcement, as well as at ontexasfootball.com. If you do not have a subscription, CJ, you and Jerry just did a phenomenal job this weekend, keeping everybody up to date with the big visit weekend. Make sure you check out ontexasfootball.com. Use the promo code OTFOG. That's OTFOG, and it's only $39.95 for an annual subscription to On Texas Football. That's promo code OTFOG, and you get it for $39.95. That is $20 off your regular subscription rate. All right, CJ, you did a terrific job, bud. Good luck. We'll see you tonight a little bit on the live stream as well. I know you and Jerry want to get together and give fans a little bit even more context about what went on earlier today and over the weekend for the big recruiting weekend. Again, 16 official visitors to the University of Texas on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Some good news coming out of there, we believe, eventually from this group. All right, for CJ Vogel, I'm Bobby Burton. This has been On Texas Football.
And Jerry says hi.
Jerry says hi.